button so we can begin. Good morning. This is Colonial Classics of Essay General Meeting on Zoom, May 2nd, 2021. And the meeting will come to order.
May the 3rd.
Yes, May 3rd.
May 3rd. May 3rd? Yes.
May
May 3rd.
3rd.
Why I said May 2nd? I had May 2nd written on here. I'll have to change my May 3rd. You're right. Thank you for correcting me. Okay, May 3rd. Bruce and Larry are joining us right on just in time. Okay.
Ruth and Larry.
Okay, good morning, Ruth and Larry. We're just beginning. And Kitty Cat in the background, they're roaming around the table. Okay, so April 5th meeting was held on Zoom. 8 members and 2 guests attended. Meeting was recorded for release on our YouTube channel, Colonial Classics of Essay. Please subscribe and like. And I didn't go look and see how many subscribers, but I think there's 13 video clips. Let's see, last month we had 8 subscribers, so hopefully that's increased. Members report, members present today. I'm counting 13 heads, and our guest is yet to arrive.
I'm counting 11.
Well, I counted some that are doubled up and not 2 in front of the camera at the moment. I counted David in there. Where's David? He's lurking.
He's talking to the roofer.
He's lurking there. He's lurking in the background. I did count him.
Oh, good.
Okay. He was present for a while, so we'll give him credit for the class.
I count 13.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Good.
Okay. Georgina, favor us with your report, please.
Yes, well, we have dues only paid for 16 members going forward, and the bank balance is $379.31. $379.31.
Okay, so that means as of now, we still have 25 by our count that have not paid for last year, but is encouraging that 16 have joined us and come forward. Okay, I distributed a copy of the most recent version of the members roster. That was version 1.4 in February. It said if anyone has any updates, please get them to me ASAP. I need a copy to review and edit. Please email me with your request and I will reply with the attachment. Bonnie, we don't have our guest yet this morning.
Well, we told him 11:15. I'll
Okay,
contact
that's
him.
fine. We'll continue and we'll see when he gets in. Okay.
Oh, she's asking me to please resend her the link.
Okay, you have the information.
I should.
I noticed it in the news blast from the church. They did not include the meeting passcode and password.
It was under his picture.
It was under the picture.
Yeah,
No, it wasn't. It was a link.
The link was
it was a
there.
link. Well, that's what I sent them. So maybe that's why they can't get in.
The link was there, but they did not include the ID and passcode.
You don't need that, Bob. All you need to do is click
Didn't
on the
need
link
that.
and the church
Some
puts it
some
on the
people, the
ground.
link works nicely. Other people need to log in the hard way.
Okay, then I'll send her what you sent me. If I can find it.
Right, that has everything.
Okay.
That has both ways of doing it.
Okay, hold on.
Okay. Members who have not yet gotten their vaccinations for shingles, the flu, or COVID-19, please get them as soon as possible. If you need assistance, reach out. The COVID vaccinations are now easily available even without an appointment. There have more people, they have fewer people than vaccines right now. So if you haven't gotten it, go do it. Special event report. Does anyone have any information of interest to report to the group? Russ, you mentioned that there was a picture of the mayor along with, was it Pastor Polly? And who else was in the
I
picture?
believe Swen said that. I didn't. I've been looking
Oh,
for it. in
Swen
the
said,
paper. I
okay.
just can't pull it up.
On the front page.
Yeah, it's on the front page of the Express News.
And it wasn't Pastor Polly.
No, it was Pastor Jermaine and Pastor Don, and I don't know who else, but they were with the mayor and they were talking about protocols.
Okay. All right, thank you. That was yesterday after the service, second service apparently.
Yeah, apparently that's when that was taken care of.
Any other prayers and concerns from the group?
Bob, can you send that to me again? I can't find it.
Okay. Let me pause for a second here. Meetings. Okay, Bonnie.
And just
Or you could send it directly to them. Or you sent it?
don't want to collect them.
Okay, let me.
Oh, crap.
It's a honeymoon. That, anniversary.
Oh, I'm trying to
Pictures.
do this.
We'll get that down later, but I'm just saying that
It's editing.
those are the things I wonder about. I got $2 bills up there and I could get.
Okay, I sent you what I just forwarded to you, what I had sent to Georgina. You'll have to check the link. It wasn't showing up as blue.
I don't understand.
Well, in order for the link to work, it has to be in active in blue on the.
Got the address?
on
Do
the
you
thing.
want
So
me to
should-
send
should
it?
be in
Do you
your
want me?
email.
Do you want me to forward the email to you, Bonnie, that I used?
Sure. Is it the one from Chris?
Right.
Well, that's what I already sent them and they couldn't get in.
Oh, well, I just clicked on the link.
The problem is that what's in the newsletter, newspaper from Chris was only part of the information. The last,
Okay.
it-
then.
that
well, it
I'm
worked-
trying to send, Bonnie, do you have what I just sent you now?
No.
Well, it worked for me. That's all I did was click on that link and it worked fine.
Right.
Yeah, it worked for me too, but it's not working for them.
Huh.
They need the password and everything.
I don't know.
I just emailed this to you a moment ago. Did you get it?
No. You emailed it or texted it?
Email.
Oh, okay, let me check. Okay. Okay, yes. It's the blue in the middle, right?
The link is a long thing in the middle, and then under it says Plan B, and then there's the meeting ID and passcode. That's what, give them that.
Want some more coffee?
No.
Okay.
Give me one.
It's the same thing I sent to Ruth Ann.
Okay, hold on. And it was the blue link in the middle.
That's the link, and then then underneath that, there says Plan B, and there's the meeting code and password, meeting ID and password. That's what we need to send them.
Okay, it's below the blue link then?
Yes,
Okay,
it says Plan B, and then it has the meeting ID and password. That's the important information if they're having trouble with the link.
okay, all righty.
Just forward them the whole thing if you can, or you're gonna
I
text.
did,
Okay,
I did,
right.
and now I'm texting her, telling her which one to use. Okay,
Joe
I did.
is joining us. Okay.
There he is.
There he is.
Aha.
Aha,
There's Bob.
Good morning.
Bonnie's here. Good morning.
Wow. This is a revelation.
Is that our speaker?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Can you hear me okay?
Very just fine.
yes, we can.
Okay, we had a heck of a time getting connected here.
I'm so sorry. Apparently, sometimes the link works and sometimes it doesn't, but
Well, you know, our mistake was we tested it on an iPad with you all, but that wasn't going to work with a PowerPoint. So in using one of the laptops, we needed Robert here, a tech guy, to help us through it. But I don't know what we did, but here we are.
that's great.
Good.
That doesn't,
Okay,
all right.
so
Well-
it's you're up.
Yes.
So do you
Bonnie,
need to
go
take a few-
yes, let's go ahead with this. Bonnie, go ahead and introduce our special
Okay.
guest for the day, please.
Okay, well, this is Doug Ivan. He is, I hope you all read his bio. He's pretty darn impressive. He worked at Brooks in the ophthalmology department for years. And he tells me that Brooks moved 10 years ago and they're probably just now up to the same capability they were here 10 years ago. But Doug also told me he's used to introducing himself, so I will let him do that. And welcome very much to Colonial Classic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ivan, before you begin, everyone, please go to the speaker view. Okay, and we're going to mute all except Ivan may have to unmute himself now. And Bonnie, I muted you by accident. I also go ahead and unmute yourself. And Ivan, you have to unmute your audio.
How's that?
There we go.
Okay,
All right. Good morning. Welcome.
good morning.
The floor is yours.
Okay, well, as Bonnie said, I'm an ophthalmologist. My specialty really is aerospace ophthalmology, which is one of those things that you learn on a job over decades of dedicated work in that area, and which is what Brooks Air Force Base was all about. Often confused with Brooke Army, has nothing to do with it in any way. So Brooks was a place down there on the southeast side of town, affectionately known as Sleepy Hollow. Not a lot of people knew what was going on there because there was a lot of classified stuff, and so we just went to work and did our thing, and in support of the space program initially, and now in support of aircrew, or back then in support of all our aircrew, military aviators, and not only in the U.S. Air Force but also around the world. And so I've got about 30 years active duty, and probably about 25 of that was involved with being assigned at Brooks. So that is the way of background. I'm going to try to now bring up my PowerPoint. I might need your help, Robert, because when I push this, I see my PowerPoint. How do I get it so you all see it?
Okay, well, there should be a button that says share screen.
Let's see, share screen. There you go.
Okay, so if you share your screen, then you can pick what you want to share and then start to share.
Are you seeing that?
Well, Joe Ivan has started sharing the screen. We don't see your, there we go. You're on, got the PowerPoint for Brooks.
Okay, now I don't see it. So let's see.
Oh,
Did that do anything to you right there? Did you lose it when I did that?
no, you're on.
Okay, good. Then we're in good shape.
Now we got full screen, we're good.
And you hear me okay? And okay, well, this is the campus at Brooks. A lot of buildings down there. It's now been taken over by Incarnate Word as a medical school. So all these buildings still exist, but they've been converted to a medical school, which is good. It made good use of these facilities, which were quite unique in the world. And this was the center of aerospace excellence, but I'll get into that as we go. It was established in Brooks Field, was established in 1917 as an annex to Kelly Field, and it was a training base. And it was renamed Brooks Field in 1918 after Cadet Sidney Brooks was killed here in San Antonio in an aircraft training accident, believed to be related to the fact that he had just had a recent vaccination. So that's kind of an apropos. But anyway, it set the foundation for looking at things like that as it impacted aircrew. When the Air Force became a separate service arm, the base was redesignated in 48 as Brooks Air Force Base. And then in 59, the School of Aerospace Medicine, called the School of Aviation Medicine initially, was at Randolph, moved over to Brooks, and President John F. Kennedy's last official act the day before he was assassinated was the dedication of Brooks as the USAF School of Aerospace Medicine, and basically kicked off the aeromedical side of the space race. It became known as Brooks City Base in 2002 due to a base realignment and closure commission decision. This was done to protect it from further bracking, which didn't work. The base was finally bracked in the second round of the bracks in September 2011. And the missions were moved up to sunny Dayton, Ohio. And many of us who had roots here and were older, unfortunately, the experienced base stayed in San Antonio and didn't move up there. And so they lost a lot of capability, and they only now really are fully up. Their centrifuge is running as of a year ago. And so that's been what, almost 10 years. They're finally now up. And you remember that $10 billion we were supposed to save by bracking these bases? Well, it actually ended up costing an extra $8 million to get this, actually it may have been 8 billion, and get this whole mission converted up there. But don't quote me on that number, but it was a heck of a lot of money. So the primary missions of this school, known as USAF-SAM, and that wasn't all that was on a Brooks Air Force Base, but that's what I'm going to focus on. It is primarily what was there. And the missions of aerospace medicine were to select and make standards for picking and then keeping aircrew, and not only aircrew, but special operations people, et cetera, et cetera. And it did examinations. My mentor was involved with the first original 7 NASA astronauts, but then NASA pulled that mission out of there and brought it to Houston. So the kind of things that we looked at aeromedically and dentally were involving altitude, acceleration, which is commonly referred to as G forces, whether it be minus, positive, or transverse, or lateral, environmental effects on humans flying, and then human performance across all capabilities. My world was in vision, and then development of aircrew appliances and equipment. And we did a lot of that at Brooks, and I'll touch on that with respect to my specialty of ophthalmology in a little bit. And we were also charged with educating not only US Air Force flight surgeons, but international flight surgeons, flight nurses, and physiological training officers, the whole cadre of professionals needed to support a flying force. And the international community sent many flight surgeons here to learn how we did business and to learn from us. A smaller role was aircraft mishap investigations, and I participated in a number of those in my years, and several of which were right here in San Antonio, but I'll get into one or two of those in a little bit. Lesson number one, and I've learned over the years, and my mentor basically would submit a test to physicians now before we would teach them about aviation ophthalmology, is how do you spell ophthalmology? Because this is the first thing you need to know to have, to be on my good side. And we've seen all sorts of spellings from even colleagues. And here's the list of the commonly used ones. And the key is here, don't forget that little H there. If you learn nothing today, learn how to spell that, because when I quiz you next time, you'll be ahead of everybody that's come to Brooks to learn about ophthalmology. The specialty of aerospace ophthalmology, however, is unique. And as I said, it's kind of an on-the-job learning experience. And this was pioneered by Dr. Tom Tredacy, an ophthalmologist, but a former retired B-17 combat pilot from World War II. And he just recently passed away last week, actually, at 99 years old. And it was not COVID related, but I actually was hoping he would be here with me to give this to you, but wasn't in the plans. But aerospace ophthalmology deals with vision and visual performance related to flying and related military operations. Because we ask our aircrew to look at instruments, they have to look through assorted canopies and windscreens, they have heads-up displays, they wear glasses. Yes, about 40% of our aircrew nowadays require glasses. That wasn't the way it was back in World War II. You had to have really good uncorrected vision. Politics have driven that in a different direction to try to widen the candidate pool. So a lot of younger people now have to be accommodated with spectacles. But of course, everybody over 40, if they stay in the cockpit, need reading glasses. So spectacles are a pretty much common feature we need to deal with in designing and everything aircrew needs to do. We also, some wear contact lenses. We all have assorted visors that they have to look through, and we'll get into that a little bit. We have night vision goggle missions now that get laid out in front of all of this gear. And of course, that stuff is done at night, which is entirely different host of visual performance requirements. But that's kind of gives you an idea of the environment that our aircrew have to kind of work through. So if I can just go through what actually constitutes aerospace ophthalmology, well, we do the selection and retention standards for vision, recommend those to the Surgeon General, who then decides what they should be depending on needs of the Air Force. We also were involved, and this is really where Brooks excelled, was trying to evaluate aircrew and decide who and when an individual could return back to the cockpit safely. We also managed a number of aircrew with very common diseases and medication effects that have concern when flying. There's a whole host of optical appliances, from spectacles, contact lenses, and intraocular lenses, which is a unique research project that went on at Brooks. And then protective devices from the sun, from lasers. Nuclear flash was a big one. In fact, the result of that nuclear flash experimentation at Brooks ended up in that visor that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin wore on the moon. That was right from Brooks research. We also have to protect aircrew from ballistic particles, either fragmented canopies, windscreens, The most common cause of that in a non-combat setting are bird strikes, and they can be at high altitude. So they have to be protected as best we can against that threat as well. We also look at how vision goes on under high G, microgravity on the space station, under varied temperatures, vibration, low and levels of oxygen when pilots are fatigued, synthetic displays that are taking the world over now in terms of seeing things from a cockpit that you couldn't see before. If weather was bad, it can be recreated synthetically. And of course, we asked our air crew to do all this stuff in very varied operational conditions at night, in fog, dust, and bad weather. And if you remember that mishap that occurred when we were under the Carter administration, trying to rescue our hostages in Iran, the collision that occurred there was related to dust that impaired night vision goggle operations. So that lesson was learned the hard way. And then we do vision enhancement. You know, how do you see better at night? Refractive surgery. Let's get people out of glasses as best we can. So refractive surgery came along, and the premier studies for that for the Air Force were done at Brooks. We now have assorted helmet mounted devices. In fact, you'll probably all be rushing out to buy them in the next coming year as the second round of helmet mounted glasses starts hitting the commercial market for whatever you want to look at. And then of course, we have assorted cockpit displays that are changing all the time that we expect our crew to be able to see quickly and effectively. So that's kind of the world of aerospace ophthalmology in a nutshell. I'm going to try to concentrate on just one little feature of this here, intraocular devices, intraocular lenses, because it's a unique blend of the aeromedical environment, history, and something that we all will face, those of us who get cataracts. I happen to be one of them. So we will be dealing with that in our own civilian decisions as we go along. So let's talk about intraocular lenses in US Air Force pilots. And this slide, it combines the British roundel and the American flag, primarily because the history of this aeromedically comes from the UK initially. And I'm going to share that story with you because, again, it's a very unique combination of medicine and operational military things that have benefited us all. And I'll show that to you here as we go along. You know, we all think we pick young people and put them in cockpits, but you know, those young people become, we like to call them experienced. They get old, and as they old, they get diseases that they didn't have as young people. And one of the more common things we see are cataracts as you age. And cataracts are an opacification of the lens, and upper left-hand corner here is a clear lens. But as you get exposed, this particular type of cataract is called nuclear sclerosis or yellowing. Eventually, that can really kind of create a barrier to vision. So cataracts are common within aircrew. And to understand this, I'm going to go through a little, just very few basics of eye anatomy. So here, if you look at this picture, we've got really two basic chambers, the anterior chamber of the eye, and this is an eye cut down the middle. And you've got a posterior chamber, and the posterior chamber is filled with a jelly-like material called vitreous that keeps it the shape that it is. And the lens kind of sits between those two chambers behind the iris, which is here. And it is surrounded by its own capsular bag. In many ways, your body doesn't even really know what protein is in there. So if you have trauma that exposes this lens material to your eye, to your body, oftentimes what will happen is you'll get an immunological reaction to that lens material. So that's kind of an interesting thing about lens protein, but beyond our scope, other than what I just said there. So there are three basic cataract types. The nuclear sclerotic, which is the picture I showed you, and that's typically called a senile cataract. It is the most common cataract we see, and it's caused by lifetime exposure to UV. So one of the things that I always teach and really pound to my daughter-in-law is make sure those little guys wear sun protection, because this is a lifelong cumulative effect. And I encourage everybody to wear UV protection, a good pair of sunglasses when you're outside to minimize this risk. The other type is posterior subcapsular, and this is where you get a pacification of that capsule that I showed you earlier. This is common in many systemic diseases. Probably the most common is diabetes. And it also occurs as a consequence of systemic medications, particularly steroids. If you're taking steroid pills for arthritis, that type of thing, they will eventually cause posterior subcapsular cataracts. And then, of course, trauma. Anytime significant trauma occurs to the eye, your risk of developing an earlier cataract increases dramatically. And that's where most of the cataracts occur in military pilots, from trauma at some point in their lives prior to development of that. I'm going to hit you with 3 terms here related to cataracts, because you may see these, and I'm going to refer to them just a little bit. Phakia is basically the condition where you still have your God-given natural lens. So if you've got that, you are called phakic, okay? Aphakia is if you have your lens removed, regardless of how it was removed, you are now called aphakic. You are without your natural lens. And then pseudophakia is a condition that we're going to be talking about here, is when we implant an artificial lens to replace a lens that has been removed from the eye. So phakia, aphakia, and pseudophakia. Historically, when you have cataract surgery, there are 3 primary means of getting that lens out. And in the old days, couching, I like to refer to as ouching. This is typically the way veterinarians would remove cataracts in animals today, but they are now way beyond this. But human cataract surgery began basically by taking a needle, sticking it in the eye, shaking that lens, stirring that lens up, exposing it to the body reacts, creates a heck of an inflammation in the eye, and then over time, hopefully, that inflammation resolves and some functional vision is restored. Not very useful, but it helped a lot, but it's very painful and very long process. Nobody does that anymore, obviously. The historical intracapsular extraction was the most common type of cataract extraction done up until probably the mid-70s, where we began to convert to something, a different technique. But an intracapsular extraction, the lens and its contents is removed in its entirety within its capsular bag, that red encapsulation that I showed you earlier. And we typically did this by using a little cryo probe. You attach it to the lens, you step on the pedal, you create a little freeze ball, and you pull the lens out of the eye, totally intact within its capsule, protective capsule. But in the 70s, we began to do extracapsular extractions, and this had a number of advantages. One downside was that you need to make sure that when you make a hole to get at the inside of the lens within its capsule, that you get all this lens material out, because of the reason I mentioned earlier. If you leave any behind or too much behind, it can create an inflammatory or an immunological reaction. So extra cap surgery means we're taking the lens out from within its bag and we're leaving the bag behind. And why is that? Well, it's an important, this is the same picture I showed you earlier. The capsule, the posterior capsule right here, the capsular bag, we try to leave this back of the capsule, because what that does is it forms a physical barrier that keeps the vitreous, that jelly material, back where it belongs. If you take the lens out entirely and take this capsule with it, this vitreous moves forward. And when it does, it has a tendency to pull on the back of the eye and cause a retinal detachment, which was a major complication related to intracapsular lens extraction. So today, almost exclusively, not everybody, you still do intracaps under certain conditions, but nowadays, all of us, when the time comes, is going to get an extracapsular cataract surgical procedure. So once you take a cataract out, what happens now? Well, you got to fix what you just broke. And it's a whole different scenario of requirements when you're dealing with entities like an expensive, well-trained military aviator. You want to get them back into the cockpit. Well, the traditional way of correcting, of course, is to replace the power of that lens that you removed surgically with glasses that were out in front of your face. These were very thick. To replace that power, they were called aphakic no lens spectacles, affectionately called Coke bottle glasses, but that's kind of what they looked like. They were very heavy, very ugly. And of course, they were unstable on the face. If you experienced any G in the cockpit, those glasses were coming down very easily. They were optically very terrible. The images that they produced were very small compared to natural. And of course, you had no peripheral vision looking through that thick lens. So these were good for everyday work, but not in a cockpit and doing any kind of significant flying. So until 1967, military aircrew, Air Force aircrew who developed a cataract had surgery and were aphakic, were all permanently grounded. Well, my mentor was one of the key people who pioneered, well, we can't have that. Let's look at other technologies. So when hard contact lenses became available, the Air Force conducted a comprehensive research project at Brooks. I was not involved with that, but they did studies on G, on altitude, and everything you can imagine, to the point where in 1967, after that, everyone who had a cataract removed and corrected by hard contact lenses could be considered to return to the cockpit if everything else was good in the eye. However, they were restricted from the types of aircraft they could fly. And because primarily high performance aircraft, this is a picture from inside the centrifuge, and here's a hard contact lens, and this is the clear part of your eye cornea here. High G rates, positive G sub Z, will pull that contact lens out of position, and you would lose correction in that eye. So these were not good. And the other thing that happened at altitude, you would get little bubbles all over the central part of beneath the contact lens, which distorted vision. So even if you didn't have G, high altitude was a problem with these lenses. Then soft lenses came along, and they're hard to see. You can probably just see the edge of a soft contact lens here. They have their limitations, but basically for aeromedical purposes, they did really well, because here is a picture of one of our subjects that went from 4G to 8G. And if you look here, the little black ring around the dark colored part of the eye, although it's black in these images, doesn't move from here to here. So knowing that, we basically use soft contact lenses as our preferred way to correct vision in pilots who had to have cataract surgery. However, the story for intraocular lenses really began back in the 1940s, when a British ophthalmologist, Dr. Harold Ridley, had been taking care of RAF pilots from World War II who had pieces of glass and canopy fragments, which is polymethyl methacrylate or acrylic, embedded in their eyes from blasts or from things that impacted their cockpit and created little fragments that penetrated the eye. He noted that after several years that these particles within the eye were inert. The eye didn't seem to react to them in any deleterious way. So he began to think, well, maybe there's a better way to correct vision after cataract surgery. And this is a picture of a Hunter Hawker aircraft from World War II. It had a glass windscreen and perspex or acrylic canopy. And those two materials came into play as, sorry, I gotta get through this little animation. Hopefully that didn't bother anybody, but here's a picture of glass out in front of a hurricane. And of course, this part here on each side is plastic. So anything hitting these structures creates ballistic particles that potentially could enter your eye, particularly if you weren't wearing ballistic eye protection. And guess what? Most World War II aircraft, despite the pilots, despite the recommendation to wear ballistic eye protection, opted not to because of heat, discomfort, laziness, or whatever, and some paid a price. So that was a big no-no back then. And but nonetheless, the pilots who did sustain these were found to be, their eyes were quiet. So Dr. Ridley had to decide between glass and plastic on which to use to fabricate a lens that would mimic the pre-existing natural lens, and then put it at a location in the eye so that the optical consequences of the device or as close to being a natural visual phenomenon as possible. And the way to do that is to put it right back where the original lens was, at that plane. The material he ultimately chose to do, along with some polymer chemists he was working with, was he went with polymethyl methacrylate. That's the material that the canopies are made out of. That's the material where hard contact lenses are made out of. And that's the material that some intraocular lenses are made, most are made of as today, a type of this. He designed this lens, and if you notice, it was round and fairly thick. And he put it right where it needed to be optically. He did an extracapsular extraction well ahead of the rest of the world, put that lens right where it needed to create the most natural optical consequences. So much, so good. However, just to go back here, if you notice, it's just a round disc. There are no appendages on it. So when Dr. Ridley put that in there, gravity took over. The lens was too heavy. The lens did not fixate permanently, and it many times slipped out of that position, causing other damage, particularly to the retina. As a consequence of that, although his first patients saw very well for some time, too many of them had complications, and he basically earned the ire of the rest of the ophthalmology world internationally, particularly within his own country. And that also spread to the United States. So he became an outcast within the community because of these complications. Well, if you look at an intraocular lens designed today, it's basically the same shape as the one that Dr. Ridley designed, but we now have these little arms on it. These are called haptices. And what that does, when it's placed inside that capsular bag, let's see if I have a picture of that. Yeah, when it's placed in a capsular bag through the opening in the anterior capsule, we slip this lens in. These little arms kind of spring out laterally, hold the lens in position, and more importantly, the tissue reacts to that material and creates a scar that binds it down permanently in position. This is the way cataract surgery is done today. And his only mistake was basically not having those haptics or arms to permanently fixate the lens. Roll forward till the 1980s, and now Dr. Ridley is recognized for his vision and for his surgical accomplishment. And he actually is now becomes a knight, knighted by his queen. So he was back, but after spending several decades in the doldrums, he is now revered by the world because it's affected all of us, not just aircrew. So what about our older pilots who get these cataracts and have them removed? What are we going to do about intraocular lenses? Well, we had no data on this whatsoever. There were no intraocular lens pilots flying in the US military back before 1970. Well, a unique study was done at Brooks, and this was a classified study at the time. It involved chimpanzees. We implanted their eyes with intraocular lenses of various types that were available at the time. We took them into our centrifuge down there, which is still operating and training aircrew, and took these monkeys up to 12 Gs. That's 12 times the G level we're feeling right now. Examined them, and we're able to see that certain types of intraocular lenses just maintain their position perfectly. So on the basis of this research, and this was just one aspect of the study, but this is the one I was involved with, the G study here back in the 1970s. On the basis of this study, we felt, Dr. Shedesi felt he could go on and recommend that military aviators, including high performance aircraft pilots, be allowed to go back to the cockpit if everything else was okay and fly in fighters. And this is a picture here of Dr. Stevenson, who was one of our co-investigators, looking at a monkey that I took this picture and we just basically took them out of a centrifuge, and we wanted to look at them and see what those lenses were doing. Monkeys back then, they carried viruses that we were not really paying attention to. Nowadays, this kind of research isn't done that much anymore. It's really not necessary, but they now have virus-free monkeys. Who knew back in the day? The one funny story on one of these monkeys got loose in the elevator, 4-story building at Brooks. And if you want to put a monkey in his element, you stick him in elevator shaft and then try to go get them. So that took a fire department and 12 guys to get that monkey out of the elevator shaft. So in 1979, we had our first pseudophakic artificial lens implanted aviator return to flying due to the work done at Brooks. We actually even had an ejection of one of our pilots with an intraocular lens. And fortuitously, this occurred in San Antonio while I was at work. So we were able to actually go and recover the pilot who ejected safely. I'll just give you, this is the crash site just south of town. And he was an older aircrew member, 47, but he was an instructor pilot at Randolph, very experienced. As I mentioned, he had a cataract. This one was from trauma, from an earlier softball injury. And he did well, basically, did following cataract surgery. But in 2000, they had an engine failure, and that airplane only has one engine. It's a safe airplane, but they developed some problem, and they basically ejected low speed, 100 knots, but about 200 to 300 feet under above sea level or above ground level, and ejected successfully. That particular aircraft, you have to eject through the canopy, and there's an explosive cord that runs through the canopy. So when the ejection sequence is started, this cordite explodes, fractures the canopy, and the aircrew go up through the shards, hopefully very few shards, up through what was left of the canopy from that explosive charge. That all went well. We saw him later that afternoon over at Brooks. His vision was excellent. He had really no change, although his vision wasn't perfect. He was 2015 in the good right eye and 2025 in the eye that had cataract surgery. That's still a pretty good result, although we're doing much better nowadays with that. So expect that number to be achievable just about in everybody. So he was stable, and that was one of the boxes we learned from experience. And so we knew even an injection, the high G forces associated with ejection wouldn't cause any additional problems. So this work then, basically that story is just one of many that is unique to the Brooks campus and has had an impact not only on USAF aviators, but that technology from Dr. Ridley now is available to all of us as we have cataract surgery in the future. And of course, the international community, flyers and pilots all over the world, have drawn their conclusions and their policies from that research done there down there at Sleepy Hollow. So that was just one of the things that I find to be an intriguing little story. So, and that brings me to the end of this. And if you have any questions, be happy to answer them. Please don't tell me I was mute the entire time. Okay, good. I would have expected Bob to be doing this.
Oh, it was wonderful. We heard everything. It
was.
was a great presentation.
Good.
Thank you so much. Questions from the group? If you're done, be sure to stop sharing unless you have something else.
You are screen sharing, stop sharing. There we go.
There we go.
Bob, I do have a question. I got unmuted. It took me a little while to find the button. I spent several years with technical responsibility for life support equipment for the Air Force once the equipment becomes operational, aircraft equipment. And one of the things that we always dreamed of was to be able to successfully eject pilots at any speed, since these aircraft, they're capable of going several Mach in some cases and bring them out alive. Was there, in later years, in your time there, did you ever see any progress made beyond the ACES seats?
There are other seats. That was not my genre. I mean, for us on the eyeball side, we were more concerned about the level of G when you were dealing with folks who had devices on board, like glasses, like contacts, or in this case, intraocular hardware. So there are newer seats. I know that for sure. The F-35, I don't know who makes them. I think it's Martin Baker but there are new seats in the F-22 and the F-35, the parameters of which I don't really, that's beyond my expertise, but we had a host of experts, obviously in San Antonio. I don't know if you ever worked in San Antonio with this, but we had a host of experts dedicated to that, although that hardware development was really done elsewhere.
Okay, I was just curious as to whether you might have seen that.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, as a former crew member, every year that was, we sweated out the exam, the annual exam with a flight surgeon every year, and just praying that you're going to get through it okay. And some don't, some don't. Fortunately, I was able to get through it, but it was quite a trauma.
Listen, I agree totally. Everybody was like that, including this old flight surgeon. I would sweat that out. I would do everything I could to escape and evade, but they knew where I worked. They came after me, and yeah, it was a phenomenon. I used to get, when I get my dental exam as a part of that annual flying exam, my blood pressure would go up. But I did my damnedest to make sure I tried to control that, because if it didn't, I was heading to Brooks for a total workup, right? And
That's right.
no, flight surgeons were not the enemy, but they were a potential barrier to a
Essential.
career. I got it. But our role as a flight surgeon is to get you through that and to bond with you, and to try to make sure that pilots who occasionally make bum decisions or dumb decisions like escaping and evading stuff, we're trying to make sure that when you had a real serious issue, you weren't afraid to talk to your doc, so that we avoided any catastrophe. I was a flight surgeon for the Thunderbirds for part of my tour out at Nellis. And, we had shows that we had to put on. And obviously the Thunderbirds had never missed the show because of a medical issue, right? So the young whippersnapper flight surgeon basically, had to kind of make decisions based on, hey, is Doug Ivan going to cancel this show in Washington, D.C., because they'll be pointing fingers right at me, So fortunately, we didn't really have any issues, but there were some people who fly with colds, and, I would normally said, take a couple of days off, but not when the show was going on. And I just kept my fingers crossed that nothing really happened. But for the most part, pilots eventually come to you when you need to, but you're right. I mean, you're often on the wrong end of the doctor-pilot relationship. And that's unfortunate, because Brooks was the center of saving pilot careers. This research kind of typified only one of many things that occurred cardiovascularly, hearing-wise, all this stuff at Brooks. We needed you guys to come there so you could kind of be looked at your data. If you ended up getting the invite there, your data on your eyes, even though you were coming for a heart problem, we collected, and that information allowed us to know more about pilots and what our expectations and requirements were. So it was a contribution. It was painful, I know, but most people don't get to Brooks. You only came to Brooks if you're in trouble. So
You're in trouble. You go to Brooks, you're in trouble.
yeah, exactly. But as I said, we returned about 85% of the pilots that came to us grounded. In other words, their careers were over. They'd come to us, and because of the work that was done at Brooks over the decades, we were able to figure out amongst that group who could go back safely and effectively and still do the mission and not kill themselves. So basically, that about 85% of the individuals that came there got returned to status. So that's a lot of money saved, a lot of experience saved. So in the end, I think the story is a good one, although that visit to Brooks, I know, can be very, very scary for folks.
You bet.
Well, thanks for your service.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you to everyone, all the folks here for their service. And Dr. Ivan, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. It was excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I had fun.
Bonnie, you have something. You're muted. Go ahead, unmute your audio and go ahead and ask your question there. Go ahead, Bonnie.
I was going to ask Doug if he's had cataracts.
Well, yes. I haven't had cataract surgery, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure I don't, because the thought of operating an eye scares me. You know what I mean? But no, I do have cataracts, and what I would say is, have any of you had cataract surgery?
I have, and both Dr. Terry did mine.
Stu Terry, I know him. I know him.
Great guy.
Yeah, and you're happy with the result?
Yes, very much, very
How about
much.
Bonnie? You too?
Yes, I can open my eyes and see every day.
I mean, yes, about,
And I've worn glasses since second grade. Now I don't have to wear anything.
we can make some adjustments to people who wore glasses prior to cataract surgery and try to eliminate that as best we can nowadays. And that's part of the accomplishment. But I would say about 95% of people who have modern cataract surgery with intraocular lenses are going to see 20/40 or better, or even 20/20 or 20/20 uncorrected these days. So, it's a great science. And so back to your question, yes, I have early cataracts. And what do I do about it? I make sure that my diet, I follow the supplement regimens like an ARIDS-2 diet supplement, but most importantly, I don't go outside without sunglasses. And by sunglasses, I mean a good wrap, not these things that, have these little John Lennon looking red lenses on them. I'm talking about something primarily for you all and me, something that blocks blue, kind of like what you should be using when you're looking at your computer screen, but also outside. So like a yellow or an orange blue blocking sunglass provides the most protection, and not allowed for flying because it distorts color vision, but nonetheless, that's what you should be wearing when you go outside, and have it wrap, protect those sides. So
I've had cataract surgery also, but my report is not quite that glowing in that it improved my vision, and I'm thankful for that. But I do have a fluctuating vision problem, whereas one day I can take them off and I can read anything I need to read, and the next day I need to put my glasses on to clearly see it. And there's been no explanation offered, and that happens kind of in a yo-yo cycle for me. In addition to that, I've had extensive dry eyes after that surgery. And I think, there's not a whole lot that can be done with the dry eyes. You can just keep washing them out with over-the-counter drops, but, that's not very helpful for me.
well, again, not knowing, you had cataract surgery in both your eyes?
Yes.
Okay. There really shouldn't be very much variation because those lenses should be locked in place. Now, there are other reasons why you can get some variations, and that's the back of your eye, your retina could have some changes in there that can fluctuate. But it sounds like a lot of this may be related to your cornea, meaning tear film, tear dryness. That is the most important layer. It constitutes about 40% of our optical clarity. So if you have dry eyes, even a mild degree that you may not even notice or be symptomatic about, using tears on a regular basis is good for all of us. And I don't mean just use them when you feel like you might have a dry eye. I mean use them, faithfully throughout the day, 4 times a day, and then see if that doesn't help. You can stabilize your what's called the precorneal tear film, because that's where the light first enters your eye. And if that is not nice and smooth, then light is not going to go where it's supposed to go, and it could affect the quality of your vision.
I had the cataract surgery done by one doctor, and afterwards I didn't get good results. I got macular pucker. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, macular pucker can occur on its own. How long ago did you have the surgery?
Oh,
2 years.
2 years ago.
Okay, so
I wasn't happy with that doctor because that happened. So I went to a second doctor to get my second eye done, and the same thing happened on my second eye. So I've got macular pucker in both eyes now. And recently I had an exam and they said glasses won't help me anymore. I need to go to low vision help.
Just a couple of comments. I mean, macular pucker, macular edema following cataract surgery is a common complication. Now, when I say common, it means we see a lot of it if you're doing a lot of cataract surgery. It's not, it's rare-ish nowadays, but it still happens on a weekly basis. I'm sure that people doing cataract surgery see this. It was more common with that intracapsular extraction. When that vitreous would move forward, it would pull on the macula and create swelling in the macula, which is what we call macular pucker. But some people get it. Some people would get it even if you didn't have cataract surgery. I mean, macular degeneration, you're one of the booby prizes of growing older. And there are things that can be done to help you with that. Your surgeon can go in and do a surgical procedure if it really gets bad, but it's got to be, that would be that's a significant operation on the eye. But again, it's done commonly for this. Or you learn to deal with what level of acuity you have depending on your needs. So yeah, low vision aids may help you there. But yeah, that's what you don't want to see happen, but that's in the cards for any number of us as we age.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Bill, you
welcome.
have a question? We'll
Yeah.
close
I-
this out.
I know what you mean about sunglasses. I've probably spent 20 days a year skiing up in New Mexico, and I always wore the wraparound, and that always helped. Now, something I had for dry eye a couple of weeks ago was the LipiFlow procedure, where they roll your eyelids back and they put this gadget in there, and it's supposed to help with your dry eye.
Yeah, I mean, there are various ways to treat dry eye. I mean, the simplest thing is just to regularly use a tear. And what I recommend, generally speaking, is an over-the-counter non-preservative artificial tear, because a lot of people have reactions to the preservatives that are in eye drops. So they make a non-preservative or preservative-free drop. That's what I use. And Russ, on any given day, my eyes can sometimes be horribly asymptomatic or horribly symptomatic, and then on others, they feel fine. And I don't change a thing. I'm still using the drops, so it helps. And I would say that's your first step. Plugs could be put into, there's two little drainage ports. You tried that? Yeah, there you go. You can put these little plugs in there that basically block the drain of your tears away from your eye. They can be permanent or they could be temporary. Try them out, see how it goes, and they can dissolve. That's something to try, but there are fancy other things that can be done for advanced cases. But I would start with, and routinely, use that drop. And particularly any of us who are looking at computer screens and reading, that helps. That helps relax your eyes and eliminate some symptoms.
Yeah, I use Pataday drops in the morning.
Okay.
Pataday. Yeah.
Okay. I look for the cheapest one out there that works. So, and there's a host of, it can be pretty pricey. So yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ivan. It's wonderful.
Herb has a question.
Go ahead, Bonnie.
Herb has a question.
I think Herb is muted. I can't.
Herb is
Yeah,
muted.
I think so.
Herb, you gotta
Herb.
unmute.
Can you unmute
Unmute.
your audio, Herb? Do you know how to unmute your audio? There's a button for your audio for unmute.
At the bottom of your screen, you should be able to find unmute should be the first thing.
No, it's still muted, Herb. Herb, we're not hearing you, Herb. You're not hearing you, Herb.
Herb,
No, Herb's muted. We're not hearing what he's saying.
sorry.
Sorry,
I
Herb.
share his pain. That's how I felt trying to get the Zoom thing going. I get it. I get it.
Okay, it's 6 after 12. We need to finish a couple of things here. Thank you so much, Dr. Ivan. It was wonderful presentation.
My pleasure. Hope you learned something. Thank you.
Hey,
Good
Thank
to
you.
meet all you guys and gals, and yeah, stay healthy.
all right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, Bonnie. See ya.
Okay.
We have 3 birthdays this month to celebrate. Shirley Boris, May 12th, Patty King, May 1st, and Hal Mandel, May 2nd. Happy birthday to all. If I missed anybody, jump up and down and wave your arms to attract my attention. But that's what the list said. Present officers of the organization were re-elected in March to serve an additional 1-year term beginning May 1st.
He's got nuts in it.
We still have some unfilled positions. Editor of the newsletter.
Other nuts down.
We need someone to take over that position. Membership committee chairperson
I'll be down
Patty
in
King
this.
resigned last month. Needed some to take over membership committee, hospitality committee, not filled last year, but we'll need that soon as we hopefully resume in-person services. And Bonnie needs assistance with nominations. So those positions need to be filled. Bonnie, have you had a chance to talk to Pastor Polly about the time to do the installation of officers? I'm going to be.
I don't want to do that until we have the officers to do it with. And plus she's leaving in June, so.
Well, the officers have been reelected.
But we won't all serve, so we have to get new people.
Well, I haven't heard this.
Well, the ones that won't serve are the ones you just mentioned. The membership director, the hospitality person.
No, that's not an officer. The hospitality is a committee chairperson, okay?
Well, I know, but I think we need to have a meeting and look at our bylaws because they're terrible. Because I think all those people should be officers.
Well, that's true, but in the tradition of the group for all these years, we've had officers. I think the president, vice president, the treasurer, and I'm not sure what beyond that. And those officers we're about a month and a half behind installing them already. And so.
Okay, so which ones are officers?
Okay, here it is. Okay, president, that's me. Vice president, you.
Me.
Secretary, Edie Scott. Treasurer, Georgina Schwartz. Then we have 3 members at large, Barbara Moore, Lois Armour, and Cynthia Duvall. Okay.
Those have all said yes.
Now, all those folks were reelected in March, and the term of service began 2 days ago.
Okay.
We need to have the installation. We went over this last month. Need to have the installation to formally install these officers. Okay, that needs to be officiated, hopefully by Pastor Polly. It needs to happen as soon as possible because we cannot take official action like having a board meeting until that's done. So now, as far as dates this can happen, it can happen for me anytime after the 14th, because I'm going to be gone for a week starting tomorrow. So if you can arrange for a time, it can be after service, after second service or something, or a separate time. Pick something that works for Polly, and then let the 7 of us know. Okay, when we can do this.
I'm gone most of June.
Okay, well, let's do this then in 2 weeks. Anytime.
I'll be gone. I won't be here. I won't be here.
I thought you said you were gone in June.
Most of May and part of June.
When do you leave?
I leave next Monday. But I'll talk and see if I can get the times lined up.
Even if we have to do it by Zoom.
Okay.
I will be gone, but if you text me or something, I can join a Zoom or set up a Zoom where we can do this installation of officers by Zoom if that needs to happen. Okay.
Okay.
So let me know.
You say you're back?
Huh?
Rob, when are you back? When are you back?
I'm leaving Tuesday, tomorrow, and coming back in a week.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're leaving Monday the 10th, then it's sometime, at the earliest convenience that we can get the folks together. We can do it on Zoom I guess. Nothing I know of says it has to be in person, but we just need to have the ceremony.
It would be nice to be in person.
Huh?
Yeah. It would be nice to be in person. I won't be here till June.
Okay. Well, we would rather have it in person, but under those circumstances, we can do it at any time. Just let me know when, and I'll
Okay.
set up a Zoom meeting so we can do this.
Okay. Cynthia,
Yes,
did you by any chance talk to Edie Scott?
I did not. I have contacted a couple people about membership. I haven't heard back.
Okay.
But no, you mean to ask her if she's willing to continue? I can do that. I'm gonna probably, I might see her tonight at games.
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
ask her.
Oh, yeah, I bet
Um,
she'll be there.
Also, what are we looking for the newsletter person? Can this just be an email newsletter? Does it have to be anything?
The newsletter format is, you can look up what we've had in the past. This is the first month we have not had one. Larry's published a little 4-page newsletter with some topics and things. You can look back and see, the format of this.
Does it have to be that format?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily.
It can be something simple, just the meeting information, birthdays, something like that.
We can have it be whatever we want it to be.
Okay.
Yes, information about the meeting, birthdays, our guest speaker bio, thought of the day, anything that we want to put in there to make it interesting, and then we send it off to Chris to send to church wide. We want to go church wide to everybody. So
Well,
it
okay.
does not have to be anything huge and complicated.
Well, if I was thinking about taking that on, but if we can simplify it a little bit. And
would be
also,
great.
besides church-wide, I could do a direct email to just the current group. We could cover it both ways.
Well, yes, that's fine. If we've been doing it church-wide because we want to attract lots of
New
extra
people.
attention. So
We
and
could do
Chris
it
does
both,
that. If
yeah.
we send it to Chris, she'll make sure it gets out church-wide.
Mhm.
But we can also send it to classic members at the same time. That's
Okay.
fine. But
Yeah.
this can be simple, a simple 1 or 2 page thing with the information du jour and go from there. Yes, it would be wonderful if you would take that on for us.
Yeah, well, I don't have to, I can make it simple, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think simple is great.
Yeah,
Okay.
simple is fantastic. Okay, that's wonderful. Okay, next meeting, Monday, June 7th. Now, one of the things that we have to talk about in an executive session is when we're going to return to in-person meeting. And so certainly by July, my target, don't want to make it immediate, but my target, I would hope that the July meeting, which would be, let's see, when was July, where's our calendar here? The July meeting, okay. Well, Monday, July 5th. Now, that might be too close to July 4th. So typically
think
we
it is.
push that back a week. So Monday, July 7th, I'm sorry, July 12th, Monday, July 12th, would be the second Monday in July. And my target would be to have that be our first meeting in person if we can, if the group so decides. So
I'd like to suggest maybe the first meeting we go to Milano's and in their meeting room. And that way we can still have a meal, and I guess we'll have a guest speaker, right? In person.
that's
Well, I've got some speakers lined up. One of them only works in person. It wouldn't work by Zoom,
Okay.
but he has a collection to look at. So I don't think Milano's would work
Oh.
for him,
Right.
but it'd probably work for other speakers though.
Okay,
Okay,
And we also were talking about getting the picnic tables out and having a picnic after the meeting. And somebody like Jason's Deli does those bag and box lunches.
yeah,
That would be fine.
yeah.
They're not real expensive. They're good. We could have those
Yeah.
on the picnic table. The only thing is if it rained, we would have to,
but
I
you
don't
do
know,
have
sell the
some,
lunches.
you do have some labor there. You have someone has to put the
The
tables up,
table.
take them down, clean up the trash. Yeah, you got
Yeah,
labor.
you're right. That's all doable, but from what I heard yesterday, the church has offered tables and chairs to any group that wants to do stuff outdoors. So while we've been doing it, I've been doing the setup in the gym, having some tables and chairs outdoors, a couple tables there. Yes, it's a little bit to set up, but yes, something we can handle without too much difficulty. So yes, that'd be a plan.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful. So closing thoughts and prayer. Does anybody have anything to offer the group?
I want you to tell me if we have, I had to step away for a minute. Did we designate a time for the officers to be installed?
It's not yet.
Bonnie's working on that.
I
And we
will
may
work
do
on
it by Zoom.
Thank you.
We'll advise. Okay, does anybody have anything to close this out? A thought of the day? Okay. I have a little something. I'll try to shorten it down. It's basically believe in yourself, have faith in your abilities. Without humble but reasonable confidence in your own powers, you cannot be successful or happy. So with that, we will adjourn and pick this up in June 7th. And everybody be safe out there.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You too.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.